One. Okay, thanks all for your patience. We'll get underway in just a moment. Kia ora koutou. Welcome to this council meeting of the 23rd of March. Apologies for the slightly late start. We just had a wonderful presentation from Tanya Ali, who was speaking to us about making our council more accessible for our hearing impaired community, and it took a little longer, ironically enough, because of the lack of availability of an interpreter. So we're a little bit late underway today, but certainly a very valuable conversation for us to have had. So thank you for your patience. Welcome to council staff, elected members, councillors and community board members alike, members of the public who are here today, David Ogden, Chair of our Older Persons Council, iwi representative Andre Baker, and who do we have online today? No one online today? So I'll now pass over to Andre for a karakia.
A tēnā koe e te kai hautū, e whaka haere tēnei tō tātou nei huhuinga mo te ata nei. A koutou mā ngā rangatira o te kaunihera o Kāpiti. Ngā kai whiriwhiri o te kaunihera. Te whakawinenga e tinana mai ki tēnei huhuinga mo te ata nei, nei rātami kia koutou. E whātoro ana te ngā kau kia rātou te waingaro. Kia tau mai te manaakitanga ki runga ki tēnei huhuinga. Tā wharautia mātou te kākohu take o te mana atua, o te mana ariki, a tuturu kia rongo whakamaua kia tēnā.
Tēnā.
Huie, tāki. E tika ana ngā mihi ki te wāhi ngaro, ko te tehe ko te mate whawhati tata, o te uri mokopuna, o Manny Parata, Carleen, te tamāhine, Ivy, i te rangi nei e taitinana mai ia kei roto ki te takiwā o Kāpiti. Aopopo e hari ana ia ki te tūranga waiwai o Tatiawa ki Whakarongotai i reira te tangihanga o te taonga te mate. E tika ana ngā mihi ki a ia, ki te kirimate, ki te whānau e pane ana i tēnei wā. Koutou hoki ngā tini aitua e whakangaro atu ki te pō. Huri anō ki a tātou, whakapiripiri nei, o tēnei huhuinga, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā tātou katoa. I just wanted to take the liberty of referencing the daughter of Meni and Ivy Parata, who passed away suddenly in Whakatane earlier this week. Her family are currently returning her to our district, and she will go to Wakarongotai Marae and Waikanai tomorrow for her tangihanga. I just want to acknowledge her passing, a senior line of Ngāti Toa and Tatiawa. So we grieve for that family. We send our aroha and our condolences to them as the district of this community. And also acknowledging those that are known to us and unknown to us, that are infirm, unwell, who've passed. Just respectfully acknowledge those families and those people at this present time. And returning us back into the light, it looks very much like a sunny Otaki day today out there. And so I hope that our meeting is reflective of that. So my greetings and acknowledgement to you all in your various capacities. Kia ora tata.
Kia ora, Andre, and we join with you in sending aroha to the Parata family and friends. So I'll take the council blessing as read. I believe we've kind of covered that off. Number 3, apologies. Do I have any apologies for today? None that have been communicated to us. Any declarations of interest relating to items on the agenda today? No. Number 5 and number 6.
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yes.
I believe I'm
Mr.
named on
Larissy.
the agenda today on one of the items for appointment to the Risk and Audit Committee, as well as the public excluded process as well.
And we'll note that conflict. Any other conflicts? Do we have separate declarations of conflict for the public excluded agenda, I think, later on? Or do they need to declare that now? So that includes the public excluded agenda?
Yes, I'll
Thank you, Councillor
declare
Halliday.
an interest in public excluded with regards to DLA allocations for the panel.
Thank you. That's noted. Number 8, members' business. Do we have any requests for a leave of absence? Oh, hang on. We've got public speaking time, number 7. So we have a public speaker who was down for public forum, but I believe is going to speak in public speaking time instead. So that's Deirdre Kent, the need for more food security in the district. Welcome, Deirdre.
Good morning, councillors. I want to talk to you about food security and just give you an example. I grow a very nice fig and we're sharing it around the neighbours a lot. And this is $38 a kilo in Moore Wilson's in Wellington. There are things that we can grow in this district that are not being grown. And we used to have a green gardener here. In fact, we had a large number of years we had a green gardener. And we are going to be faced with food security problems in the future. There are going to be more cyclones. There are going to be more floods and hailstorms producing smaller onions and smaller kumara and the apples in Hawke's Bay. We're very dependent on diesel-driven trucks and a very short period. We will run out of food if we don't watch out. No, that's a long time. But you know, there could be an occasion that we are getting short. And I'm particularly concerned about the price of green leafy vegetables here and how essential it is. And we used to have, you know, a lot of gardens on council land. There are lots of other ways that council could support food security in the district. For instance, I presume, you know, supporting bioregional research into the types of foods that we could and the broader diversity of food that we could grow here, where it's best suited to grow, minimising the need for inputs such as synthetic fertiliser and irrigation. So there are lots of ways that the council could support it, which would be reasonably cheap. But I don't know the answer to the problem, and I'm just presenting it to you as a possibility to have it in the back of your mind all the time, because it is so critical to the health of our people. Thank you. And you can have a couple of figs if you like. Pass them around.
Thank you very much. You certainly give a fig.
Well done.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Deirdre. There may be some questions. Do we have any questions? I'd just like to point out that that's not actually relating to anything on the agenda today, but it's just been transferred through from our public forum today. So do we have any questions? Yes, if you want to come back up to the table, I have a question from Councillor Handford.
Kia ora, Deirdre. Just a quick partai from me. I'm wondering whether you've seen the recent mahi that Wellington City Council has done on creating a food systems action plan, and what your thoughts are on that as kind of a way of pulling together.
I haven't seen it, Sophie. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'd be keen to send it to you though for your
your
thoughts.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deirdre. I'm assuming you're a big fan of community gardens.
Yes and no. They're okay if they work where people don't have a lot of their own garden, such as in Mount Victoria, work well. But not necessarily in this district.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of they're quite small ones. They tend to languish. But when you're talking about gardens on council land, are you talking about the council having and maintaining the garden, or making that land available?
Well, I don't know, Nigel. I don't know. I just aware that we need more root vegetables. We need more grains and lentils. We need more. We used to have wheat in Canterbury, for instance. I mean, anything the council can do to feed along that lines will be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's good.
Thanks. I've got two more lights. I've got Rob and Jocelyn, and then we'll move on. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Deirdre. Just a comment, really. Old Taki, we have a lot of small waterways which are just around the racecourse area. It's a swamp area.
Yeah.
And there's a predominance of cress, which is great. And we all help ourselves to that, so that's just a comment. We also have an initiative at Old Taki, very special to our road, and that is some of the locals have been grazing the long acre. They throw out an electric fence and put cows on the council berm there, but and a predominance of blackberry, but that's all local stuff. Thank you.
Okay, and of course the Indigenous knowledge is very important. I mean, Andre would have something to contribute there.
Yeah.
Kumara. Did we used to grow kumara in this district? Yes, I've grown it in Otaki.
Yeah, that's getting a nod. Councillor Coford, thank you. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Thank you very much, Deirdre, for coming along. And I have to admit, when there was all the floods and what have you over in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, I went and planted lots and lots of veggies in my garden.
Yeah.
But I suppose my question is, you're asking what the council can do. Is there an opportunity, do you think, for council to facilitate more people to grow their own vegetables? Do you think it's a dying art, or do you think it's actually alive and well?
Well, I wonder about that, because I mean, I live in Parkwood Retirement Village, and the older people have a lot of knowledge and a lot of skills, but it seems to be changing as more people come in. The allotments aren't being used so much. I tell you what, Kāpiti village has got a food forest there. They're very, very active. I don't know, but I would really like that. That's what the Green Gardener did, teach people gardening skills. And of course, people can teach each other, perhaps using time banks. That's another whole issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deirdre. Just before we move on to the next speaker, I'd like to acknowledge that Denise Hapeta from Ngā Hapu Otaki and Hurawai Paki Ngāti Toa Rangatira have joined us online. So next we have Lynn Sleeth.
Good morning, Morena. I'm speaking in item 10.1, which is the speed management plan on the agenda. I'd like to recall that apologies from Bruce Henderson, who is the chairperson of Kāpiti Cycling Action. He's involved with the health reforms at the moment up in Palmerston North. This is just the first stage of the process. The council isn't being asked to approve lower speed limits today, only the consultation plan. But if the concepts were to proceed, it would be a very significant help to those who wish to cycle but feel unsafe, and also contribute to our response to climate change. Vehicle speed is the #1 factor preventing more people from taking up cycling. I'd like to add that Sean's report is very, very comprehensive, very well done in a very short space of time. So our group would provide strong support for both the proposed consultation plan and the concepts, and especially the proposals around school precincts, lower speeds around schools. Is getting more children to cycle and walk to school has been a goal of ours for quite a long time. We also note the changes proposed. This is a little further down in the report on Peka Road. This has been an issue for us for a long time. There's a kilometre of Peka Road which is 80k. We feel that it should be a consistent speed on the whole road. It's certainly a popular cycle route. And also improvements to Poplar Avenue. Very, very good proposals for Poplar Avenue to lower speeds around the school, which will certainly help with the crossing to the park. So we want to play our part in the next phase. Bruce also wanted me to mention the Cycleways, Walkways and Bridleways Advisory Group, which represents road cyclists and equestrians. They wish to be involved in the consultation stage as well. Just a small point from me. Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add about corridors. In the report, there's mention about corridors reducing to 60k. This is very sound as well. But I just wanted to express some caution. On page 27, figure 6, there's a picture there. I don't know where it comes from. It's a picture with some nice concrete blocks in the cycle lanes. Some of you may be aware that under the revocation project, there's some concrete blocks in some cycle lanes in south of Waikanae and also on Ramity Strait. The road cyclists don't like those. We understand the technique of traffic calming. We understand the need for devices that will slow traffic. I think it's called horizontal intervention or something like that sort. But it has to take note of the requirements of the road cyclists. You don't want to introduce a road safety campaign which actually makes things a little worse. There is evidence that road cyclists are hitting these concrete blocks. So we just say something a little less aggressive. I'm sure Sean and his team can come up with something a little bit less dramatic than the the picture in the paper. So thank you very much for the work, and we look forward to the next stage.
Thank you so much, Lynn. We certainly look forward to having further conversations with the group as the process carries on and through the submission process. But maybe some suggestions that can be carried straight away into the draft. We'll have that conversation with staff. So, do we have any questions? Councillor Warwick. Shelley.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
I'm just questioning 26. So do you not agree with the figure that's ticked where you can cycle beside the island rather than around it?
I think in principle, in our critics of what we're seeing on Main Road now, we've given an example up at Peka where you've got a concrete block there which basically takes you into that interchange. And there's a sign on the top there. It's called a threshold. That's the technique, the traffic engineering term. But when we complain about it, the Waka Kotahi produced a bypass around the left-hand side, which is quite generous. The green paint takes you around to the left-hand side. The road cyclists are very happy with that. if you go up to Waikanae now, the green paint takes you straight into the concrete blocks, and there's very little space to one side. I'm sure Nigel's witnessed that. And you know, it's just in the details. I mean, it looks fine on the plan, but it's just the details. So I mean, the principle of traffic calming, it's tricky because you're trying to make a message to the motorist to slow down, but at the same time you're trying to allow the vulnerable people to get through. I'm watching what's happening in Wellington now. They're using a lot of rubber. They're not putting lots of concrete in. They're using a lot of rubber. They're using frangible plastic. They're using different techniques. I mean, you can do a lot with paint as well. It's just that concrete blocks. There's a project on North Shore in Auckland where the AT has just stopped the project because a cyclist hit the concrete block. A number of motorists have also hit the concrete block, and they just thought, well, this isn't working. We're going to stop it. So I think it needs a bit of a consultation.
Thanks, Lynn. Any other questions? There don't appear to be any. Thanks so much for your
Thank you
ongoing
very much.
input into this. Mr. Ogden, David, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors and staff and other people like me. I'm quite into figs actually at the moment. I've got a lot of figs. I don't know what to do with them, so I was hoping she'd stay, that lady. Anyway, Morena, I'll be very brief, but I just want to mention 1 or 2 or 3 points. First of all, I'm sorry that I could not go to the Social Committee, Councillor Halliday. I thought it was going to be at 9:30 in the morning, but it was at 1:30. So if we could, I don't know, is it going to stay at, well, just by the side, sir? Thank you, sir. No, I've got the, I can go online and get it. I just want to compliment the Your Worship and the CEO and the staff for the local governance statement, which is among the papers. It's a very, very good paper. It's very clear, very visual, and it's an excellent document, Madam Chair. I just want to get back off Councillor Cofford. I'll end. It's the document I brought. Being an architect, Councillor Cofford. I thought he might be interested in it. This is something that the district, local authority that I was involved in, this was published in October 2011. Kim Kelly, who you're aware of, she was sitting over there one meeting. She commissioned it, but it was a proposal that I got underway in March 2007. It's a list. It's called a heritage inventory, and it's got all of the heritage buildings in the local authority that I was involved in. Mainly, there was a reason because people wanted them all restored, you know, and brought up to date. I thought, well, we make a list, and that might curb their zeal. But it was very, very interesting. In fact, I used to live in Penrose Street, and I was looking through it, and I thought, well, that's our house, you know. And our house was in it. But under your agenda, there's a number of items under property, so I'm not being ultra what you're up to here. I just want to suggest that if you're not already doing, you make a list of your properties in the district. We found we didn't have a list. In fact, what happened as a result was we made a list. We gazetted 2,000 hectares as reserve, and other land was turned into commercial and residential properties. So it was all for the good. It cost a bit of money actually, but it was very well worth it, I thought. And so I don't know if you've, and I can't ask you questions really, but if you haven't got a heritage inventory, the buildings here and the Maori heritage and the just the history of the place. I love history, and the history of the place can be preserved, and it brings to our attention this particular aspect of our lives. And it's something we might do in Horowhenua, with Horowhenua, who I think are our brothers and sisters, I suppose, our brothers in arms. We are really quite a close community, I think. and something you might have a think about, Madam Chair. That's about it, really.
Thanks, David. Do we have any questions? Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thanks, David. You bring up some very valid points, but I was wondering if I could actually ask for clarity from our council officers whether we have tracked our heritage sites. I'm under the impression that we have stock take those, and we've also in the process of stock taking our land holdings as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Look,
Sorry, we'll just wait for the microphone. Got an answer from Group Manager James Jefferson. He's just waiting for the microphone.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair. Look, I do recall back in my place and space days, our 2017 community facility strategy has a stock take of a significant stock take of premises and property around the district. Whether it picks up, the caution I put is I don't know if it particularly identifies heritage things, but there is certainly a starting point, and we can ask maybe Mike to bring something back and answer to that question.
It may be something that can be addressed as we work on our culture and creativity strategy as well.
More than happy with that, and I just will just note our heritage trail that is very popular as well.
Yeah, and more popular this year than ever before, I understand. So, yeah, good point. Councillor Wilson.
Just a quick question, David. That heritage inventory, I'm assuming that's for the hut. And yep. And is that available? Did they make a digital copy of that? So
you've got to ask them for a copy. You know, they've got a digital copy, which you've got to have a proper computer to download, I imagine.
Yeah.
But well, you know, like in the hut, they were going to demolish the town hall and there was a big stink about it. You know, an architect came out from London and created a furore, and it stopped. But well, there's a lot of heritage everywhere, actually. You know, I mean, we're getting here. You know, there's a lot of pockets of brick and tile, but there's a lot of places of the original. Well, ask your architect counsellor; he'll tell you.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
We're lucky to have him, I may add. Oh. I think so.
Councillor Cofford.
Thanks, David. That's a real tribute to you. You put that together yourself, did you?
No, I said I want it done.
Okay.
And it wasn't even mentioned. So
no,
it's so funny.
We do have a lot of heritage on the Kāpiti coast. We have a Pliska house in Rosetta Road, very famous, and I think it would be a wonderful opportunity to do a similar publication and register these heritage sites and save them from being pulled down. And in fact, open space could be a heritage thing too. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. It turned out really well, actually. There's a lot of. I'll leave it with you. I want it back. I'll leave it with you. But there's a lot of there's pictures and a lot of verbiage of the local historians. You know, I think it's great. I think I'm very proud of it. So, you're flying a plane that's got 2 motors yet, sir? I keep seeing on Facebook.
Thank you, Mr. Ogden. Maybe you can have a chat over morning tea.
I'm sorry.
We've got a tiger moth, which is heritage.
Thank you so much. I'm just checking in with council staff. Does that bring us to the end of our public speakers? Thank you, Mr. Ogden. Does that bring us to the end? I believe it does. Just checking in, is there anybody else in the public gallery waiting to speak? It's been a moving feast this morning. So we're on to item 8, members' business. Any requests for leaves of absence through this forum? No. Matters of an urgent nature? No. Mayor's report. It says nil. That doesn't mean I haven't been doing anything. I think I did. My office did share with councillors a list of events and obligations that have been happening over the last month or two. They're being circulated now. I'd just like to draw out a few of them just very briefly. Huge congratulations to Māoriland on another wonderfully successful festival, and I'd just like to thank Libby Hakaraya for along with Tainui Stevens, for their work over the last 10 years, and wish Madeline all the best as she takes over in that role for the coming years. Also really great to have a couple of ministers coming to the event this time. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Culture and Heritage, Carmel Sepuloni, came and had a look around and came to the keynote speech on the first day, and Willie Jackson came and spoke to the red carpet party on the final night. So that was great to be able to catch up with both of those. I'd like to congratulate the RSA on the new memorial at McLean Park. A wonderful achievement. It's taken some years. Also, congratulations to Roger Booth and Jenny Rowan, who are running some health meetings at Southwood Theatre. I spoke at the first one earlier this week, and there's another one this evening for anybody who's interested. I believe it starts at 6 p.m. Congratulations to staff as well, and all those who've signed up for Over the Fence Cuppers coming up this weekend. And Councillor Spires, well done. I believe you always have a Over the Fence cuppa, and probably quite a few in between as well. So we've had a huge uptake. Nearly 50 people officially taking part, and a number of others unofficially. Well, not 50 people, 50 groups representing streets all over the district. So a wonderful initiative, and not just a nice thing to do on the weekend, but also really important in terms of building community resilience and connection. So a lot else going on, but just pulling out a few highlights. So we'll move on to item number 10, and we're now into reports. And our first is the Speed Management Plan consultative draft. And welcome to Ron Whenua, who's going to speak to this report. Supported ably by Sean Mallon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I just want to partially correct the comment. Ron is actually the author of the report, and I guess in the short period that Ron's been here, he has put a huge amount of work into this project, and I guess that's reflected both by the report and some of the comments that we've been getting back from community board attendances and other things that Ron's been involved with. So, but I'll leave Ron to do the talking.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So would you like to introduce the report or take it as read?
Well, through the chair, just take it as read, but I'd just like to highlight that on page 59, Whakarongotai Marae is incorrectly named as Ruakawa Marae, and we'll make sure that we correct that before we go to public consultation. And also some of those photo images, we're going to have more higher resolution photos in the version that goes out for public consultation. That's all. Thank you.
That's great. Congratulations on a great report, and also the huge amount of work that's already gone in taking this around community boards in the district. I believe one night you might have started your report after 10 p.m. So I won't mention which community board that was. But so thanks for the work that's gone into this already, and we're certainly looking forward to having this discussion with our community. Do I have any questions?
Yep.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks for the report, Ron. Has the government's indication of pulling back the legislation, is that likely, you expect that's likely to have any impact on that? And because some of the feedback that I've had is people going, oh, well, they can't do it now. But my understanding, and you might be able to clarify this, is that regardless of central government legislation would have perhaps forced council's hand on some of these things, but we can actually set our own rules around these things. Is that right? In terms of speed restrictions in areas, certain areas.
Well, through the chair, the following day I got hold of Waka Katahi and I asked him that very same question, and the advice is just to carry on as we are at present. So there's no change for us.
Yeah, I think, so the announcement, they talked about, I guess, refining the focus for the state highways to the top 1% in terms of the the areas where they've got significant issues with death or serious injury accidents. But yeah, as Ron's mentioned, as far as our process, we're still obliged to continue with that under the legislation.
Thank you. Councillor Spires?
Oh, thank you, and thank you, Ron. I understand you have been in contact with the principal of the Schools Association and the work that you've done there, which is really, really good. But I'm just wondering, in some instances, this won't make any difference, I mean, around where I live, because cars can't go 30 k's anyway. But I was just wondering, that is this just the first piece of the puzzle? I mean, people will still take their children to school by car because of safety issues. So I'm just wanting to know, is this the first piece of the puzzle? Because to get children to walk or bike to school and get them out of cars, we need funding from Waka Kotahi for footpaths. You know, we need our bus stops looked at and all other kinds of things. So is this just the beginning of a journey we're on to make children walking to school? Because some roads around myself, where I live at the beach, going to Kena and Grey School, there's no footpaths on one side of the road. So is this just a beginning of a process for road safety of getting children to school?
Yes, it is. This is basically step one, and you'll notice in the speed management plan, part B, we're asking for feedback about where we should go in the future, and I think one of those options is, for example, expanding areas around schools so, you know, children can walk and cycle to school safely. So what we proposed is basically the baseline, and then we're looking at feedback, and it's quite likely some other schools, they will get some extra infrastructure, you know, funding, as long as funding's available in the future to help them get safely to and from school, around areas, along road corridors, etc. And so every 3 years we'll be doing an updated speed management plan, and as it goes, the further out it goes, the more it will mature.
Right. So is council going to be engaging with all of the schools to ensure that they put in a submission or for this plan?
Yes, I've got a meeting with School Principals Association on the 28th of April. I'm going to talk to them, and then we will be contacting each of the affected schools because we need them on board to, you know, sort out the detail, whereas at the moment we're asking for approval in principle to proceed.
Yeah. No, I just want to say thank you too for your work, because it's been really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spires. Councillor Coe.
Thank you. Excellent report, and I'm looking forward to having speed bumps into Horrow Beach Road, I have to say, whenever that might be. But look, I just wondered if there is sufficient detail in the report for the average person. You know, my expectation is that there's some aspects of these changes that will be a bit controversial, you know, like tradies rushing to get to their jobs in the morning may not be too happy with some of the proposed changes, for example. So is there enough detail? You've given examples and you've talked about designations of, you know, what's happening with certain categories of road, but, you know, what does that mean? You know, people will want to be looking at the areas that they live in and drive through regularly to say what exactly is likely to happen in these streets that I use. And I just wonder if there's a way of making that accessible, even if it's online or something, to have like a map of the district that explicitly shows what the impact would be on all the roads in our district. Is that a realistic objective to aim for, so people can click on that map and sort of navigate their way around and see what would happen both now and an alternative version of in the longer term?
Yes, I'll answer your question in two parts. So we have a whole lot of concepts, you know, proposed, and they show the detail of what we're proposing to do. Some of that there will be some flexibility in terms of the traffic calming. You know, it might get moved around a little. We might change it. So, and there will be a web version, which I believe we're working on now, that people will be able to click on. Probably 90% of the plan is around schools, and we've got, you know, Peka Road, and we've got some town centres. The rest of the district at the moment we're not even touching, and that's why we're going to the community and asking them, well, what would you like to see in the future, which is the part B. Then we'll bring back that, and we're hoping to get some themes out of that, and then we'll present that to council for approval, and that will guide us for the future speed management plan. And then we'll repeat the cycle, then we'll work with those communities, we'll develop some concepts, so when that goes out, they've already had involvement working together to developing how we're going to stage that implementation.
So there'll be a point at which, before we finalise anything, people will be able to see online, what's happening in their area.
For the Part A, which is the concepts, that's what we're consulting on now. We believe there's enough detail showing what we're proposing. There might be a little bit of change in scope, where we start and finish might change by 100 metres or so, that kind of thing. Beyond that, that's where we need the public feedback.
Right.
And that'll all be on a web page.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Warwick.
Page 27, where there's the green tick and the what you want and what you don't want. Will the crossings, there's lots of them that are currently got solid sides, be transitioned into the ones where the cyclists can cycle without moving into the traffic across the district?
Yes, I'll just explain what I was trying to propose there. Like figure 6, we're very aware of the needs of cyclists. That's just an example of how we may do some traffic calming on what I've called relevant roads. And then what we're also, figure 7, what we're trying to show there is we're not going to put speed humps on every road on the Kāpiti coast. That's the idea of those two images. So we're well aware of, cyclist needs, pedestrians needs, etc. And we'll make sure whatever we do, and also, public transport, etc. We'll make sure we take that all into account. But you're not going to see physical devices. There will be some, where required, but they're not. If you look at some of those concepts we have in the appendix, you'll notice they're mainly restricted to around schools, but they're not absolutely everywhere. And there's a number of schools where speeds are already slow, and on at those sites, we're not proposing any traffic calming at all because they're already going slow. So there's no need to do it.
Because there's lots of these around, like just take Wairinga Road outside the primary school at the back in the kindy, where there's actually lots of kids on bikes, and the pedestrian crossing has solid sides instead of parts where the cyclists can still be away from the traffic. Is that going to come, are we going to be able to comment on that kind of thing? We would like to see changes to stuff that is already on the roads or not?
Oh, definitely. That's the whole idea of, consulting.
Okay.
But the key thing is, just so you're aware, the key reason for having crossings on raised platforms is to get the crossing speed down. And by getting the crossing speed down, if someone does get hit, their chance of surviving will rapidly increase. That's the whole idea. Where they're already going slow, there's no point raising the crossing because they're already going slow. And what we will see as we go forward, we will still see, things like raised safety platforms. But as the area gets bigger, we'll actually see less of them as the area gets bigger.
And the other one is the likes of Riverbank Road, page 31, where you've got half of Riverbank Road being 50 and the other half 60. Seems a bit confusing for people. Is that what you want people to feedback on, or?
Yes, and the reason we've got the 50 is there's child care centre there, and there's a whole lot of activity, and on that rural section from Aotaki Street, is it, down to Rangirua Road, that's basically rural, so our view is a safe and appropriate speed is 60 for that. But people can comment on that. We are required by the rule to review any road with a 70 km/h speed limit, and we have to change it to what is safe and appropriate. So the 50k, the reason we're proposing that, in the guide actually it suggests it's 40. We're proposing 50 because all of the other roads around there is 50. Long term, maybe the whole lot will go to 40, but that's where we need the community. This is step 1.
Thank you. Councillor Coфord.
Oh. Hey, thanks, Ron. Great report. Great community consultation. 10 out of 10. Just with regard to the Riverbank Road question, half of that, or the first part of it from the main road, has a preponderance of coffee kiosk machines and a lot of interaction with people going to the factories there, and of course the child care centre, which is right in the middle of the industrial area. So it does have a footpath, and okay, it has to have a lower speed of 50k because of the people. Heading off out towards Rangiora Road, the west part of Riverbank Road, it's, as you say, it's rural, and it has no footpaths and just a sort of grass berm. And that's leading on to my question. I'm in a sort of rural area, and a preponderance of roads in Otaki are still sort of rural with no curbing and channeling and footpaths, and the seal just runs into the grass berm. I like it like that. It's very natural. However, we've got school children walking home from school at Waitahu along Rahui Road, and Otaki College children. We have horses, we have cyclists, we have no footpath there. My big question is, how can we control the speed of these trucks and these cars? They do more than 50, they do 100k down there. When you have two trucks on our corner just below our farm, they don't fit. They're on the grass. That's one slowing down and stopping and is on the grass. The grass is really a refuge centre for speeding quarry trucks. You have to jump out and get on the grass. So the question is, how can we control the speed without putting humps in and things like that?
Well, look, the only mechanism we have at the moment for rural roads is basically posting the speed limit and enforcement. That's all we have.
Unfortunately, we don't have a predominance or preponderance of police in Otaki. They are very shy of the area, so I think probably speed cameras with a would be the answer.
Councillor Halliday.
Oh, sorry, I thought there might have been an answer coming back from them. Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I have about three things I'd like to touch on. The first one's on page 7, number 10. It talks to the speed management plan proposes a staged approach as an alternative to reducing speed limits on all roads by focusing on. I'm just curious to know, was legislation, if we don't do something like this, are we going to be required to actually be looking at reducing speed limits on all roads? In other words, we've been proactive in this space.
Well, we are, sorry. Yeah, through the Chair, we are required to develop a speed management plan, and Waka Kotahi, they will have to certify the speed management plan. Once that's certified, then we can make changes which will go into the National Speed Limit Register, and once they're registered, they then become legally enforceable.
And we'll be doing that for all our roads across the district?
Well, that's the whole, yes, but that's the whole idea of a plan. It's a transition.
Right, so that's why I split it into two parts.
Yeah, it's like Wellington City, for example, they're doing all of theirs. For Kāpiti, we're proposing a staged approach, and every council is, they're taking different approaches reflecting community views.
And then I just wanted to comment that I think on number 11, it's a very pragmatic approach. A pragmatic approach that has a pathway to outcomes, which is fantastic because a lot of our community have been concerned about traffic around our schools, and we've had instances of trying to get pedestrian crossings, and to me this is the pathway to achieve all that sort of stuff, which is fantastic. But we've also had a lot of community talk about, as Rob's just pointed out, speeding on long roads as such. I guess that dovetails into something else I'd like to ask, which is sort of touches on what Rob was saying. Is there any relationship, once this is instigated, that police will be enforcing these speed limits, or is there any sort of tying in with the legislative approach at all, or it's just wait and see sort of thing?
Well, nationally, my understanding is that police very much support this, and we will be liaising with our local police as well as we go through this. We will be doing monitoring, before and after, and this whole speed management plan across the whole country, it will evolve.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. Another one on page 36, just as an example. And this is just me not quite getting my head around something that might have been explained elsewhere. In the picture there, you've got a 30 and a 50 speed signs circled, talking about duality or something. Is that moving from 50 to 30, or will there be different speeds at different times?
Yeah, what it's designed to show, maybe we need to improve that. Basically, Raumati Road there, we're proposing a permanent 30k right up to Kiwi Road, and then Weka Road, that at the current proposal, that is still remaining at 50. So it is a dual sign.
That might need a little bit more clarity
Yes.
with regards to explaining that to people.
Yep, agreed.
That's not really how it came across to me. I wasn't too sure how it came across, to be honest. Because it's like that, say on page 39, you've got 20/50 there as well. And to me, it looks like it's a dual time sign and such. Other than that, thank you very much. Been great seeing you at all the community board meetings over the last month.
Sean, did you want to make any comment? You missed out a couple of times on making a comment. I wondered if you wanted to.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to add, so the changes in legislation, there is going to be a movement in speed camera ownership, responsibility is shifting from through the police, through NZTA back to local government as well. So we will be involved, and you will have the ability through that consultative process to look at potentially speed cameras as well as part of this change.
Could I ask for clarity? Do we get any of the income from the revenue that comes through that?
I'm not sure if that's been clarified yet.
That's not another responsibility being shuffled onto local government with no attached funding, is it?
I think, and as was mentioned before, we're expecting to get a lot more feedback than just the speed limit, the comments around safety, road safety. I expect we will get a lot of comments and feedback on that.
Yep.
And the other element to this is also likely then to need a conversation about funding, because at the moment we are restricted to some extent by the subsidy that we get from NZTA, and Mana Road has been mentioned a couple of times. There's some proposals there to do some traffic calming that wasn't funded. Extended footpaths, I think Councillor Cofe mentioned that as well, and again that's another area that wasn't funded as part of the last funding round. So there may be certainly a conversation as part of the LTP about council being prepared to put more funding into the space that won't necessarily be matched by waka kotahi subsidy, if there's a desire to at least move some of this forward at a reasonable pace. I'd expect that will probably come from this process leading into the long-term plan as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that.
Councillor Hanford.
Kia ora, Ron, and Tautoko Councillor Halliday's comments around coming to the community board meetings. I know that's been greatly appreciated, so yeah, thanks for that. Just a quick question around the nature of this consultation. So on page 13, you've kind of got a bit of a high level kind of comm statement, I guess, that will go out and have the links inserted into it. But I'm keen to understand whether we'll be asking for quite specific feedback on specific areas or locations, or whether we are after kind of like we're going to be asking catch-all questions. And then if we are asking those kind of catch-all questions, if and probably as you've just said, it's quite likely we'll get feedback around kind of a huge range of road safety issues and accessibility and cycleways, walkways and bridleways concerns. How will we kind of catch that and kind of point it through a different avenue to potentially kind of respond to it in some way, shape or form as well, appreciating that that's probably further down the track. But my main question is, yeah, the kind of questions that we'll be asking through the consultation and the nature of that.
Well, through the chair, we are working through that, but anticipation of that question, I've made some notes here, basically to do around schools. So one of the questions we've already been asked is how much flexibility do we have around schools? Well, we actually don't have a lot. We either have to make them permanent speed limits or variable speed limits. There is some flexibility regarding the scope of the works, you know, where we're proposing to go through. You'll notice there's that 100-metre cordon, but what we've done is we've been out to all sites and we've had a look and we're thinking, well, actually, if we put a sign here, no one can see it in time. Like Tilly Road is a good example. That's why it's around the corner. So there is some flexibility there. There are some schools with variable speed limits proposed that are candidates for inclusion in an area-wide scheme. So if we had a big area-wide scheme, then that school probably doesn't need a variable speed limit because it's covered by a whole area. There might be some repeaters, and there could be infrastructure, but that might be a later stage. And there is some flexibility regarding the speed-related infrastructure, like we've talked about location, you know, the type, like we've given examples, for example, of raised safety platforms. It may be that it's on a bus route or something like that. We might decide to go for a cushion so that the buses can straddle it, that kind of thing. And Te Horo is probably a good example. We've got those platforms or speed humps there. What we'll do is we'll be talking to them about the technical aspects of that, making sure they're under, under lights, that kind of thing. So there could be a little bit of flexibility, but it's just designed, it gives us a budget to work with, and then we will work. So the first round is to get basically approval in principle, and then the second round we'll be discussing the detail of what we actually are proposing to implement. That will be more localised. And can I just add one other thing, just regarding the speed cameras?
Sure.
We've gone back to Wakakatahi, I think 2 days ago, and we've asked them, because they've said they would be coming to us, and we've asked them the question, the fact that they haven't contacted us yet, does that mean we're not getting speed cameras or not? So we've asked for clarification. So we're expecting a response shortly on that.
Councillor Cooper.
Just had a couple of questions. So, in terms of safe and appropriate speed, is that, and in terms of that definition in the plan and the maps, is that evidence-based, or is it just an ideology? And when I ask that question, is the ideology of what the lower the speed, the less trauma, that ideology? Or is it evidence-based in terms of, it looks like these blanket maps. So for example, safe and appropriate speed for Kāpiti Road, is it evidence-based moving it from 50k to 40k? Or is it the ideology of let's just make it slower so it will be safer?
I'll answer that in a couple of parts. So the first thing is 30 kilometres an hour is internationally recognised that is the highest impact speed that you can have to give a pedestrian or cyclist best chance of surviving if struck by a vehicle. So that's why around schools, high activity centres, generally there's 30 kilometres an hour. On roads like Kāpiti Road, there is a place function and a movement function, so that's more of a balancing act in terms of the speed. So we have guidance on those speeds, and we're actually following the national guidance on that. So, and that's why that's a bit of a balancing act. And if you go back to Riverbank Road, for example, in fact, a lot of the roads, the recommendation is a lot of those through roads is actually 40 kilometres an hour. That's what they've recommended long term. So we are proposing at this stage a staged approach because we need to work through that, and we still, it's very important for public transport, etc., etc. And I think that will evolve as we go through the process nationally.
I see that the old state highway will be in the map will be 40k as well. And so I just wonder if I understand what you're saying. Has there been any work done in the unintended consequences, such as actually causing frustration with motorists, so they speed more, adding to congestion, loss of productivity, the unintended consequences of moving, say, the old Kāpiti Road, the old state highway down to 40 kilometres an hour? Or is that outside scope? You're simply, we're looking at safe and appropriate. Those unintended consequences are for someone else.
It's in the back of our mind. And for example, if I use Kāpiti Road, for example, which is probably a very good example, the safe and appropriate speed is 40 kilometres an hour. That's what's been recommended. But that's one solution, shall we say, to a problem. So the thinking at the moment is before we even look at that, we should look at all of the crashes, etc., along there and the issues. And we should also look at, are there any options available where we can reduce the risk of crashes to reduce the severity, etc., in addition to looking at, a reduction in speed limits. And maybe speed limits is the answer, but there could be other options where we can retain the speed limit at the same time. And it's that balancing act again. We're not using it as a blanket response to everything. Definitely not.
Yep. Okay, well, just one more, just on that. So, in terms of developing these maps and the safe and appropriate, and we use Kāpiti Road again, did you look at, to create those areas, did you look at the crashes, serious crashes, non-injury crashes? Was that work going to come later as part of that ongoing?
Two parts to the question. So this is essentially a principle-based approach. Having said that, if there are high-risk corridors, then we obviously would be looking at those to, reduce the speed limit or implement measures to reduce the risk. We actually don't have any really high-risk corridors within the Kāpiti Coast. They were dealt with basically in 2019, other than the 70k, and we do have national guidance from Wakakatahi. It's called the Speed Management Guide. It's easily, discoverable on Google, and there's some really good information in there about speed management, and we've used that in developing this plan.
Do you want to add? So we did, sorry, just off the back of that, the work we did in 2018-19, so we do have a map showing the network across the district that has accident history series that was used to actually pinpoint those roads with the highest level of risk in terms of both the history around accidents and the current speeds on those. So that, as Ron's mentioned, we dealt with those as part of that process. But yeah, as Ron said, this is more that starting point in terms of the principle, then follow that up once we get a whole lot of feedback and consultation about the reality of what does that really mean, and the bottom end of Kāpiti Road in terms of how you might manage a speed limit down there of 40 k's sort of from the airport down to the beach, looking at those sorts of things as they come through.
I do actually have a few stats for you though. For the areas that we're proposing, this is the Part A, not Kāpiti Road, but the Part A. In those areas we're proposing to change the speed limit. Since 2017 to 2022, there were 4 fatals, 7 serious crashes, and 39 minor crashes. So while it is principle based, we actually are addressing risk, and there are a number of those that were pedestrians and cyclists. So if we had a lower speed limit in those areas, and most of those are schools, it's quite likely those numbers would be quite different.
Thanks, Ron. Mr. Olsen.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, no, it's really good to see some of this being addressed, especially around the schools, because I think safety around there is a real issue for us at the moment. I'm just looking at a couple of these, and I'll bring attention to page 42 is the one I'm looking at the moment around Grey Ave School. Oh, yeah, Pavran Beach School, sorry. I'm just wondering these windows for the variable speed limits. Are these windows big enough? And why I'm saying that is I know that, I go past these schools in the mornings, and although the school may start at 5 to 9 or 9 o'clock, there's often stragglers, children by themselves who are late walking there, and by that time, there's nobody out there patrolling the pedestrian crossings or anything anymore. I mean, wouldn't it be better to just, expand these windows out a little bit more, just to, because these are the children who are really at risk as well, because they're often by themselves and there's no one watching them. Also, when school for pickup, I would wonder if they shouldn't, start earlier as well, because at a lot of these schools, especially on a wet day, the parents will be there picking them up at, they'll start queuing up at 20 minutes before the school, because if they want to park, they need to. And some of these streets, they really become to one-way streets, and it's really can be quite dangerous. And most of these parents as well, not most of them, but a lot of them, when they do pick up their children, they have preschool aged children with them who are, walking on these ones going to school. So I wonder if, expanding these windows slightly, what the harm would be there, because I can only see it, being a benefit more than anything.
Through the Chair, we will be discussing these times with each school and the windows as you've suggested, and they will be adjusted. They will differ for each school.
Thank you.
As somebody who is routinely late for school at primary school, I certainly concur. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you through the Mayor. Just following up on Glenn's comment, I know at Kāpiti School that children can be dropped off from 8:30. So, and I think you've actually got a longer period after school when children can stay there before they need to be picked up as well. So my question, my first question is on page, I think it's page 25, is in relation to the diagrams there, and it's about these potential high benefit areas. And I suppose my question is the word, in that heading, the word potential and then high benefit. And so I know when you dig into those documents, there is some discussion about how you define those in terms of, I think it's basically the number of vehicles, the type of route it is, and whether it's rural or urban. I'm just wondering though, here you're saying that given the staged approach, you're not actually going to be looking at all the high benefit areas, but within those groups there will be some parts of the road network which actually are potentially in more need of a reduced speed than others, rather than just a blanket pink area on maps like we have in Figure 4.
Yes, well, through the Chair, these maps are from Wakakatahi. That's what they've identified as high risk area or high benefit areas. So under that proposal, for example, if you look at Otaki, all of those roads in that pink area, they would all have their speed limit reduced. We felt, taking into account our resourcing, ability to deliver, and also we wanted to go in a bit more at a low level so we can actually learn from what we do instead of just doing everything all at once and maybe not getting the best outcomes. But you notice also in the report we've talked about for the future going forward, and if the people in Otaki, for example, if they said, hey, we want all that pink area, we want the whole lot reduced, then between now and the next plan we would work with them and we would work on a plan which could be a staged approach, and then we would present that at the next speed management plan update.
Okay, thank you. So what you're suggesting is that Wakakatahi have given some recommendations. Council staff are not necessarily wanting to recommend to follow those, but if the community has a view on that, then they will be considered.
Yes, definitely. And it's what Wakakatahi have done. Basically, they've given us the speed management guide, and they've given us some electronic tools to help us. So it's guidance, it's not mandatory, but they're saying, here's a suggested starting point. You can start here or you can start somewhere else. But they have recognised that to get to the end state and to take the community with us, it will require, it's quite likely to take a staged approach, and that's what our proposal is, to do that staged approach. But I think, to be honest, the next plan, that will be the opportunity for the real step change in the Kāpiti coast.
When's that? Yeah, okay. So my other question, and this is a bigger question. So over the years, speed is reduced, okay, and you know, whether it's because of the number of vehicles, whether it's because of driver behaviour, I don't know, but the number of people on the roads are going to continue to increase, and also behaviour of drivers is not necessarily going to improve either. So are we going to get to the point here of where we get down to 10 k's an hour? And I suppose what I'm saying here is that actually what I didn't mention in there is actually the quality of the road, why potentially speeds are a relatively easy way to manage safety. And so on, but in this here, there's no conversation around the quality of the roads, which potentially might be playing a part in all the reasons why we need to reduce these speeds as well. So I think reducing the speeds is a very quick solution here, but long term, I think we're going to get ourselves in trouble.
Well, probably a couple of things. One of the things is you'll notice we're doing quite a softly approach. We're not proposing that we just go to the end state straight away. We want to take the community with us, and we're quite aware of, for example, the function of like Kāpiti Road, etc., where there's a big movement function, you know, Moana Road, etc. And this plan going forward, taking the community with us, there will be real opportunities to dovetail that in with other strategies like the cycle walking and bridleway strategy, and they'll be quite complementary. And if we can shift some people onto other infrastructure, we're not actually at the moment proposing to reduce speeds on all roads within the coast, though we have asked the community in here, is that an option that they would like to entertain? And we will be guided, and at the moment, in terms of the 10K, we're going to be guided by what the community feedback is. And then we'll combine that with technical recommendations.
Yes, so I thank you, and I appreciate that. And using the CWB, the network is plays a really important part in this. But on that side of it, the funding in that area has been reduced substantially as well. And I think Peka Peka Road is a classic example of that, where
is there a question in here? We're in questions at the moment, and
Yeah.
we're not in a discussion
Okay.
about the CWB.
Yeah. It's
Thanks
a
for your
case of
questions.
where there seems to be a sinking lid on funding. But do you think long
Sorry,
term speeding? Here's my question. Long term, do you think reducing the speed is actually the answer?
So some big questions in there, and I'm not sure that the slippery slope theory applies to setting of speed limits. But Sean, would you like to have a go at answering that?
Well, nationally, that's the direction that the government have said we need to head to reduce serious injuries and fatalities on our highway network, which has been increasing over the last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, there's certainly a table in the report, which I'm just trying to find the page number, so it's on page 16, which starkly demonstrates the reduced risk that comes from reducing speeds. Next, I've got Denise Hapata online.
Me tēnā koe tō katoa, ko hui atu ki te whare o te kaunihira. Tēnā kōroa, Rob, Sean. Just a couple of questions. Just in regards to Tasman Road, just looking at the map there, I think it's on page 50, where it's talking about the kura at Whakatupuranga Ruamano. I know it's not a school, but Te Wānanga is not shown on that map, and then right next door to Te Wānanga is another early childhood centre that has very limited capacity in terms of entering and exiting at really peak times of the day, 9 and 3. So just wanted to be mindful that I think they to note that, and same with Riverbank Road, the brand new ECE centre, and someone else has already mentioned it. But just to ask, is it your intent, or do you see a need to add those? I think we do, and I say that because of the volume of foot traffic we have crossing Tasman Road, directly outside Te Wānanga, crossing over to the cafe in Purapura, and it's also one of the two crossings just here at our roundabout. So this is a really, really busy section between 8 and 9:30 in the morning, and again from 2:30 till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's the Tasman Road one. If I could ask the next question and let you answer them both at the same time. Have you also, is there capacity in this particular schedule of work and proposals to consider the removal of heavy trucks, fully laden trucks, having access to drive through the main street in Otaki with fully loaded trucks? Now, I ask that because we took some matters, I guess, into our own hands in a very appropriate way when we felled a large amount of forestry out at Wairongo Mai Road, and we one of the arrangements we had with the contractors who needed to traverse a number of different land blocks out there was that they could only extract the blocks. They could not be driving down Te Raupaha Street between 8:30 and 9:15 in the morning when children were arriving at kura, and then they couldn't be driving fully laden trucks along there past the kura and the two kura. There's two kura and two kohanga reo on that particular 1 kilometre stretch of road. So we part of the contract was that they couldn't be driving past the kura, at the arrival time of children in tamariki into kura and kohanga reo, and again in the afternoon with children departing the kura and the kohanga reo and parents picking them up. We banned we asked them that they couldn't be traversing the road at those particular times in the morning and afternoon. Now they complied with that and it worked out really well. What we didn't think about was and then they had to exit via Riverbank Road. So that was part of the contract we asked them to sign off on. It works really well when you don't have fully laden trucks coming through we would have the narrowest main street in the entire council area, and having fully laden trucks, be it forestry and logging or be it land waste, following that's coming out of the beach area and all of our housing development areas. So I guess I'm asking, is there room for that in this particular scope of works, or is that another, I guess that might be a waka kotahi project, or is it a KCDC one in terms of who can limit heavy traffic through our main street from Te Rauparaha Street, I guess, to Aotaki Street. So we don't want them coming to the main street. If we sit at Raukwa Marae or in our office where we often sit, the road literally shakes. The building literally shakes with heavy traffic coming through that particular area and heading down Mill Road. So we're asking, can this particular project, is it within your scope to limit heavy traffic and redirect them around Rangiuru Road and Riverbank Road so they do not go through the main street and past the school areas being Otaki Primary and Otaki College?
I think it's really good to have brought that up in this forum. It's not within the scope of this project, I wouldn't have thought, but certainly something that it's good to have identified and that the roading team will progress. Do I have any further comment from Ron or Sean around that?
Just probably worth, thanks for your comments, it's probably just worth reinforcing, like, while we've got proposals here, what we are planning to do, especially, you know, in these concepts, what we are also seeking feedback, what else do you believe is warranted to help make it safe and appropriate? And I'll use Paikokariki School, for example. I know there that they have asked for crossing points. We don't have that in the current plan, but what we will be expecting is that they will be asking for some of those, and obviously we would assess those like for any other school, and then we would agree together what we propose to put, and then we would put forward that to council in the next plan, and hopefully we would get approval, and then we would look at implementing that. So that's very key. What is missing? What else do you believe is required? And then we will be working, for example, just say we decide to go or the council decides, to expand safe and appropriate speeds around schools. Then what we would also be doing is we'd be going to each school and we'd be talking to the school children and saying, well, which routes do you find unsafe and why? Yep.
Yeah, it's certainly a great opportunity to get feedback on issues outside of the specific goals of this part of the process. So I'm going to go to Lawrence Kirby now.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, just a quick question from a comment you made just before around the schools and consulting with each one around the window. Would that potentially mean that you have different windows at different schools across the Kāpiti coast?
Yes, because we've got schools with variable speed limits and schools with permanent speed limits. You know, they're the proposals. So the ones with permanent speed limits, that will take a little bit longer because we'll be talking about the form of the infrastructure that is being proposed, and that will have to be looked alongside the needs of public transport, heavy haulage, etc., cyclists.
Okay, I wonder whether that might be quite confusing for people in terms of each school having potentially a different window if they're on a temporary one. Sometimes I think in terms of my comment, it's easier for drivers if they know that when I'm passing a school it's 30 k's, full stop. I don't have to think about the window necessarily, and each school has a slightly different window, so from 2:15 to 3:30 versus 2:30 to 3:15, that it just gets a bit confusing. I think just a comment, so thank you.
Strictly question time, but thanks for the comment. Not so strictly question time as it turns out. So I'm going to go now to Andre Baker.
Tēnā koe, Ron. Excellent report. Can I just ask for you to note a couple of perhaps corrections? Page 24 of our report, and I do want to thank you for including the marae across our district. It's katihiku, not kaitihiku. Just to acknowledge it. And I do also want to acknowledge the macronisation of our kupu in the report, and that's pleasing to see. On page 49, identifies Otaki School, and again, just recognising the effort made to macronise Martinev Street, and the rest of the document is macronised, it's not here. And off Mill Road is Winiata Place, not Miniata.
Could you just repeat that one? Sorry, I missed the last one.
Yeah, at the top there on page 49 of our report, it says Miniata Place, off Mill Road. It's Winiata. Tēnā koe, Denise, I recognise your helpful response regarding the identification of Te Wānanga. On page 51, Ron, this is consistent with the response from Ngā Hapu, is pretty much right where the intersection is, the T intersection of Te Rauparaha Street and Hadfield Street, is a kohanga reo, tūroa. So if we're going to identify those educational centres, it would be helpful to identify our kohanga reo there, and Rangiatia Church is right next to it, which is also at times used for education. So principally support us wanting to manage traffic movement and speeds in those particularly important spaces. That's all I wanted to raise with you, but thank you for the report.
Thanks, Andre. So are we going to be able to make those changes for the draft so that we don't have to have submissions from those kura? Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So I'm going to move now to, so everybody's had a go for questions. We're not going to go over 2 rounds. So we have some recommendations. I'll just go back to those. So we have recommendations on page 6 of your agendas, 3A, B and C, to receive the report, agree to consult and note next steps. And I'm going to move those from the chair, and I'm looking for a seconder, Councillor Spires. The reason I want to move them from the chair is I just think this is such an important piece of work, and it's such an important step in a process to make our roads safer and just to make our environment better all around the district. And it's something that I've always kind of looked forward to, and it's another step in the process of getting those speeds down and making our roads safer. So congratulations, Ron, on this report and how it's been going so far. So far, I think it's been received really well. I think if we'd tried something similar 5 years ago, the response would have been a little bit different. And it'll be interesting to see how the submission process works. We've heard a couple of comments around the table around trade vehicles, for instance, getting around the district. So, and Councillor Hanford made some good points around how we reach out in terms of putting this out to the community and receiving submissions on it. We've also had a couple of comments about making the information potentially a little more clear and including some extra kohanga reo and other child facilities in the document. So I think it's been a really interesting, not just set of questions, but also a set of kind of comments and suggestions that we've had so far. And I'll now open it up for any further comments or debate. I've had a pretty good go during question time. So I'm not seeing any lights on, so I'll put, oh, Councillor Coe. Oh, first of all, Councillor Halliday, then Councillor Coe. Oh. Councillor Coe, Councillor Coe.
All right, over to me. Okay, just in the light of some discussions we've had in recent times about engagement with the public, I think this is a really, really important one, and one where we can hopefully get it right. And I know there's mention in the document that there is an extensive engagement plan. I just wondered if we could perhaps have more information around what that engagement plan is. I don't believe it was included with the report.
Sure, I'll ask for that to be shared amongst all the elected members,
I
including
just-
community boards.
I just think we need to, excuse me, this is going to affect everybody, and we need to make sure everybody is aware so that there's no surprises at the end of the day when speed limits suddenly change and people say, well, why didn't anybody tell us this was happening? So I think it's, we absolutely have to make sure that everybody is aware and has an opportunity to have their say. So, yeah, good opportunity to have a really good engagement strategy.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for elected members to have a little bit of an opportunity for feedback on the engagement plan. I think that's really good. Councillor Halliday.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, looking completely endorsing what Liz is saying. And Ron, I just want to thank you for your patience at the community board meetings over the last little while. There's been some quite late ones, and you've just trooped along nicely. Fantastic report, really good information. Thank you for the answers that you've given as well. I agree with Liz that, and I think everyone at the table, we're in a new triennium. This is really going to be a really test case to see how we move forward with regards to our engagement, but looking pretty good at the moment. Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me, I just had one little question, which I just thought of then, which was when people are through the consultation process and the reporting back process, is there any public speaking aspect to this? Are people being asked whether they want to talk to their submissions at all, or are we just correlating this through what comes back?
Yeah, I'll look for an answer to that. Thank you.
So at the moment, the program is not to have people to come speak to their submissions. It's certainly an option we could look at, but I expect we will get a lot of submissions in terms of the time frame we're talking about and the ability to manage that. We hadn't allowed for a similar process to like the annual plan or something like that, but more to take the written feedback or feedback that comes back through and manage it back to the council.
Well, perhaps people can be. I'm happy with that. I was just wondering what the process was around that, whether then allowance had been made, because I appreciate the resources and time into going into that. Maybe through the community boards, if people actually had things they wanted to highlight, they could even perhaps come and talk to community boards over the period as well, maybe, or just afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, we are looking at having like the drop-in sessions and the material that people can come and look at and talk to, and posted notes and things like that on as part of that as well.
Fabulous. I will look forward to being involved in all that. Thank you.
Thanks. So have we got Bede or Richard up there wanting to speak? Richard.
Thank you, Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Mansell.
Your Worship. I just want to remind elected members that creating expectations creates a cost. Sean has told us that there are unfunded or unsubsidised NZTA appropriate projects that have been cancelled in the past. The Waikanai-Te Road project has been cancelled because NZTA chose not to fund it. If we're going to create expectations of slowing speed down, it'll come with a cost that needs to be met by council, and perhaps some funding needs to be put aside into traffic calming or traffic management or traffic whatever. But don't expect NZTA to pay for a lot of it because they've got money going elsewhere. Thank you.
Thanks, good point. Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually wanted to bring up about the consultation and the planning program from here. So it's got here that council will be consulting on this, and I just want to be, maybe the terminology isn't maybe as tight as it should be, but I'm just wondering if it is consultation, people can actually make submissions, and I always thought when that process happened, they had the right to speak to their submissions. So clarity around what actually is, permitted in those situations, because I think whatever is decided on and when it's put out there, it's very clear about how people can have their voice heard.
Yeah, we'll have further discussions around that. Do I have any more debate? Okay, so I'll put those motions. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, Ron and Sean. So we'll now take a 10-minute break. We'll aim for 10 minutes, which will probably turn into 15. So we'll see you back here soon. Thanks.